Ohio State had a huge win today over Northwestern. It's all going to help them get ready for that Indiana game next week. That will mean essentially everything because Indiana's 10-0. Indiana already took care of business against Michigan. And could that mean the tides are shifting in the Big Ten a little bit with Oregon and Indiana if Ohio State ends up losing? Hopefully not, but that's something really big to look at. But Jeremiah Smith had 100 yards in a big game for the Buckeyes offensively. You also have to look at Quinshon Judkins running the football, 76 yards. He had 2 touchdowns on the ground. Will Howard had a pretty decent game too. And the first offensive touchdown for Ohio State that they allowed at the very beginning of the game to make it a 7-0 game early on from Northwestern, but they still only have allowed 1 offensive touchdown in their last 3 games. The Buckeyes are in really good shape, but this Indiana game is really what makes me concerned because I just still don't believe the coaching is going to be there. Ryan Day has been the biggest X factor for me this entire season. I totally believe that the Ohio State Buckeyes are absolutely capable of winning a national championship with the talent they have, but they have to keep that up, and it's going to be really, really important to see that from Ryan Day. And I have no evidence with Ryan Day's backstory yet to know that he's capable of winning some of those bigger games. We've seen him do one big game in the postseason where he came close to beating Georgia. Obviously, he came close to beating Clemson the one time. He did beat Clemson another time, so there's that one win there, but still, not many wins against ranked opponents, which is why I'm concerned about the Buckeyes moving forward. But again, a great win at Wrigley Field in Chicago, a very historic place for baseball's sake, but what a way for the Buckeyes to kick off the weekend. The Cleveland Browns tomorrow, obviously, they're going to be down in New Orleans taking on the Saints. I was very adamant about the Saints early on in this season. I have not been as high on the Browns as the season's progressed. Before the season, obviously, I was high on the Browns, but that has completely fallen apart. With that being said, though, do I like the Browns' chances tomorrow? Yeah, I do. I think it's going to be a competitive game for them. I think Jameis Winston's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder just based on how some of the things went in New Orleans, but ultimately probably not too big of a chip because his time there was his time there. With having said that, though, Derek Carr being the starting quarterback for New Orleans again, I think that's going to help the Saints kind of recapture a little bit of talent on offense. I think the big thing for them has been that they faltered since he got hurt after they started the year 2-0 and then lost 7 straight games, but they kind of rebounded last week, beating the division-leading Atlanta Falcons. So I would say the Saints in a tough environment have the edge because New Orleans is really a tough place to play indoors. So I would give the Saints this game, but I like the Browns to make it competitive. I think we see Jameis Winston do some really good things, but having said that, am I confident Jameis Winston's going to go out there and be as careful with the football as we've seen him be in the Baltimore game? And even then, those 2 interceptions could have possibly happened, but they weren't interceptions. So, yeah, I'm not so sure. Jameis Winston's fun, though. And I think the Browns are really just trying to piece together what they need for next year. And that's really the goal now for the rest of the season. And as I said before, I think Kevin Stefanski's a good enough coach where you should be able to get 6 wins out of this year. I still think that's possible. Where those wins come is still to be a question mark, though, and it may not happen. We'll have to see. But it's going to be a big deal for the Browns. And now, having said that, we look at the rest of the AFC North. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, they play tomorrow. Pittsburgh's first divisional game of the year. I think Baltimore's got the edge a little bit here. I just think they're a better team. I honestly hope both of them lose, but that's not going to happen because someone's got to lose. Or maybe a tie. I'm not really rooting for a tie either, though. Having said that, though, Pittsburgh has been overall much better than they have been the last few years. I still think they're not really built for the postseason. But having said that, they've played Baltimore really well the last few seasons, and I think the game is in Pittsburgh, so they should have the edge with the home field. But having said that, Baltimore should take care of business based on their offense alone, but the Steeler defense can come and get you. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring AFC North-style football game. I'd take the Ravens 16-13 to probably win this one, but we'll see what happens there. But obviously a very historical rivalry in recent years between the Ravens and the Steelers. And the Steelers have a short week. They have to play another divisional game on Thursday against the Cleveland Browns. So I don't like their odds to go 2-0 in both of those games. I think they're going to lose one of them, and I think they're better off probably beating the Browns than they are beating the Baltimore Ravens. So I think they lose to the Ravens tomorrow, but they come back and beat the Browns on Thursday, which I am hoping absolutely against, of course, but I'm just kind of making that early prediction now. Now we move on to the Bengals. They play tomorrow night against the LA Chargers. The Chargers defense is one of the best in the NFL, and the Bengals' problems have been pretty much defensively. I don't think the Bengals are a playoff team at this point. I think the Baltimore game really was their season. If they didn't win it, they weren't going to go anywhere. And since they didn't, I just think the Cincinnati Bengals are kind of in trouble right now. And it's because they have a really bad defense. If you give the Bengals the Browns defense right now, that team's probably a playoff contender, maybe leading the AFC. I'm dead serious. That's how good their offense is. So we'll see about that. But I like the Chargers defense to kind of hold the Cincinnati Bengals down, and I'll take the Chargers because I think they're a really good team, and I think the Chargers are going to be a dark horse wild card team. Now we look at the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, this rivalry has been huge over the last few years, especially in the postseason. Josh Allen has actually played Patrick Mahomes really well in the regular season. I believe he's only lost one regular season game to Mahomes, but he's never beat him in the postseason. So having said that, the Bills kind of have that historical edge, but I like Kansas City here. I think Buffalo is actually better off losing to Kansas City in this one, too. History kind of favors teams in the playoffs that lose the first time around, unless you're the Patriots, honestly, to come back and beat you in the playoffs in recent years, and I think that's possible. I think Buffalo's better off losing this game, and I don't think the Buffalo Bills will panic if they lose the game either, but obviously this rivalry has kind of become so big in recent years that it's going to be big for the Buffalo Bills to get a win either way. And obviously for the Bills, if they win, they're possibly chasing the Kansas City Chiefs for the number one seed at the end of the year. And home field advantage can be big. We've seen that before, but last year Buffalo had home field advantage and they still lost, and they beat themselves. That's the big thing about the Kansas City Chiefs run last year that I tell everybody, in my opinion. The Kansas City Chiefs didn't have to win it all. Baltimore blew it, Buffalo blew it, San Francisco blew it, Miami was the only team they really beat. The other three teams beat themselves. So I think the Kansas City Chiefs keep on rolling here with a win. They have a lot of close wins on this season, but that is to be expected. Their defense is still pretty good and competent, and it's the best defense Patrick Mahomes has played with in a long, long time. And their offense is now jacked up with great weapons in DeAndre Hopkins and Kareem Hunt. Yeah, I like Kansas City to win this game. And you also look at some of the other games going on in the NFL tomorrow. I think the big thing, too, is going to be the Dallas Cowboys and what their end goal is going to be too. I mean, obviously the Dallas Cowboys are a headline-hunting team, so that is also going to come into question. But man, oh man, we have some games coming up this week. I think the big ones to look at, obviously, Cincinnati and the Chargers, probably a big deal. I think the Bills and the Chiefs tomorrow, going to be huge, obviously, with the division on the line. You look at Baltimore, you look at the Steelers, that's going to be big. And also Chicago playing their first divisional game, too, against Green Bay. That'll be huge. I know the Lions play the Jaguars. That should be another easy win for them, and they should get another winning season. I wonder when the last time the Lions had back-to-back winning seasons was. I think it was 2016 and 17. I think they went 9-7 back-to-back years. But I think they only had one playoff appearance between those two. Having said that, let's move on to the NBA. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 14-0. I think they're on their way to 15-0 because tomorrow they play the Charlotte Hornets, and they should easily defeat them and then get the Boston Celtics this upcoming week, which will be essentially the match of the year so far. And I'm excited to see them play the Celtics. I'm not obviously looking too far ahead. I want to get to that 15-0 record. Part of me has said, like, hey, let's humble down a little bit. The Cavs need to humble themselves before they get to that Celtics game with a loss. No, I'm all in on 15-0 at this point. I know I presented that idea earlier on in the show, but I just look at all the Cavs in double-digit figures and what Kenny Atkinson has been able to get out of this group, especially off some of the bench guys. I mean, Donovan Mitchell had 37 yesterday. Darius Garland with 29. His resurgence has been huge. Jared Allen, 24. There was no Evan Mobley, I mind you, as well. And also, you look at Karis LeVert. He had a great game, 22 off the bench. So, yeah, the Cavs are finding ways to score points frequently and often with no Evan Mobley, too. But the thing that concerned me was how the Chicago Bulls kept it so close. I don't think the Bulls are a very good basketball team. How were they in that game essentially the whole way through until the first and the fourth quarter, honestly? The first quarter, the Cavs were blowing them out of the building. The second quarter, the Cavs kind of let them come back, and the third quarter was kind of the same way. But the Cavs were able to distance themselves enough to get to 144 points. But, I mean, 144 points offensively is very impressive for the Cavs offense. They've just been ferocious. Their defense is still playing very good, but honestly, them letting Chicago back into that game kind of concerned me a little bit. And if you look at the recent history that the Cavs have with the Charlotte Hornets, that could be kind of concerning going into tomorrow's game. But having said that, though, it's still one loss. The Cavs would lead the East, but that Boston game is going to be the telltale sign. Let's keep this streak going and hope the Cavs pull it out and maybe make this whole thing up to 16-0. That would be a great start for the Cavs. And then we may be able to start overreacting a little bit and talk about Golden State chance. Golden State 24-0 when they finished 73-9 that year. I don't think the Cavs are going to go 74-8 or 73-9 or anything like that, but that would still be kind of funny. especially because the Golden State Warriors look like finals contenders right now, too. Could it be a resurgence of 2016? Who knows? But on paper, I think the Cavs are much better than the Golden State Warriors. That's it for today's edition of Short Take Saturday. I'll be back, of course, later this week with more Raw Takes with Andrew Hody, reacting to the slate of NFL games, more on the NBA, more on college football, all of that good stuff. And we'll, of course, have another Short Take coming up for you next Saturday right here on the Raw Takes YouTube page. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's Andrew Hody signing off.